Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Maggi, culinary mentor and chef with Basics Market, and today we're going to be making and learning about jam. We're going to do a few different variations. We're going to do a non-cook chia seed jam, and then we're going to do a stone fruit jam and a strawberry jam. Um, if you have any questions as we go along, please type them into your Q&A box, and we will try to answer them live as we go through this. Let's get going. Let's get jamming. So first, I'd like to start the stone fruit jam. I'm going to kind of juggle these three jams. So we hopefully can get them all done within this class. But jam is obviously a really great way to use up summer and winter fruits for that matter. But right now we're looking at summer fruits, and its stone fruits are in full swing. We're kind of coming out of the berry season as we're making this class. But there still are berries available. And I was just on a walk in the forest at my lunch break, and I came across a whole bunch of blackberries, and I wished I had something to pick them. I could have brought some in and put them into the strawberry jam, because you can use any sort of berry for that. But I do, anyway, we do have strawberries. But so for the stone fruit is any, of these fruits that have the pit. So you can use cherries, apricots, nectarines, peaches, and plums. And plums are really nice because they have a high pectin content. So if you may notice, if you're looking to have a recipe and you're following along, that we're not doing pectin jams, or we're not doing added pectin jams today, because the fruit has enough pectin to actually set the jam. But of course, you can add pectin, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we progress through these recipes. But let's get into this. So like I mentioned, I'm using the peaches, nectarines, and plums. So I cut some up, and this is the 2 pounds of fruit here. And so I'm going to go ahead and just do a few to show the pitting, getting that stone out of the fruit. So I just go ahead and cut the fruit in half. This is the nectarine, and then you can give it a little twist, and it should twist off for you. Sometimes if the fruit isn't really ripe, the twist doesn't work, and then you just need to cut it off the pit. Then I go ahead and kind of quarter the half that still has the pit in there, and you can usually pop it right off. And then a paring knife comes in handy here for just removing the pit off of that final piece. Now, as far as the fruit and the ripeness goes, so jam, it's a great way, like when you have a bounty, you have a plum tree, for example, and there's a plum tree in my neighborhood. I am waiting for it for those plums to ripen up, because I'll make a bunch of plum jam. And plums, again, they have lots of pectin, so they set up really nice. And actually, fruit that's not entirely ripe has higher pectin content. So there's a spot where the fruit is just right, where it's ripe enough to be sweet, but maybe not overly ripe, so that it still has plenty of pectin. Okay, so this is the plum, and again, just carefully quarter that piece, the half that's over the pit or the stone, and then use the paring knife to remove the stone. And then, as always, I have my handy dandy composting bowl nearby. And so for this, we're just going to kind of chunk up the fruit, and you can cut the fruit larger or smaller. A lot of it's going to dissolve and juice out and all that, but you'll get, depending on the size you cut the fruit at this stage, you'll get some larger or small chunks in there. And then here's our beautiful peach. This peach weighed about 11 ounces. So it was almost a pound of fruit right, right there in this lovely peach. Ooh, and then that one, we went right through the stone. So it was, this peach is very ripe. Peaches, generally, they don't have a whole lot of pectin. Fruits that do, as far as the stone fruit, are plums, and I think, I want to say nectarines have a pretty good pectin content. In berries, blueberries have a lot of pectin. But again, you can always amend, and we do. We have one recipe that we're not demonstrating today, but I believe it's on the jam site with these other recipes. It's the jalapeno nectarine jam, and that's a low sugar jam and low pectin on the fruit. So you'd add a little low sugar pectin to that one. Okay, so we have our 2 pounds of fruit cut up there. I have sugar and I have lemon juice, and that's all. That's all we need. And that's the basics of jam. Is you've got your fruit. And I read something recently that I liked, where it said in the jam, the fruit is the star and the sugar is the backup singer, as well as the acid, which is the lemon juice here. And then the pectin would be like auto-tune. So adding the added pectin. So you really can get away without the pectin, but sometimes it does help to set it up a little better. Okay, so I have a big pot here now. When you're making your jam, you want to make sure you have plenty of depth in your pot so that it doesn't, the hot lava like jam, because once it gets going, it's going to be pretty warm. You don't want that popping into your face and stuff. So a nice deep pot, and then a nice wide pot, because it's just going to cook that much faster. And the whole thing about the preservation of the fruit is to cook the moisture out of it. So sugar is a great preservative, and it's an ancient preservative. You know, one of the first ways of preserving foods is with honey and sugar. And here we're going to go ahead and macerate the fruit in the sugar, and that will get that preservation process going for us a little early, and it's going to start pulling that moisture out of the fruit and getting everything nice and mixed together. So you want to let the fruit macerate for at least 15 minutes at room temperature, or you can put it covered in the refrigerator overnight, and then it'll get really nice and juiced up for you. So that's the first step. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and I have a macerated already a half batch of jam, because I just did that in this little pot here, and I'm doing a half batch for the demo from now forward, right? That was a full batch I just prepped. This is a half batch I'm going to cook off for us, just so it has, so we have time to see it cook. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on medium-high heat, and we're going to bring it up to a simmer. And it will start to thicken and get jammy, hopefully, right? Okay, so we've got that. I'm going to go ahead and add lemon juice to this. So we want to add the lemon juice at this point. The fruit has macerated in the sugar. And kind of a neat thing about sugar, you know, was first produced in the South Pacific. And then it made its way to India, then the Middle East, and then to Europe. And so when it got to Europe, of course, jam making took off for Europe at that point, and the preservation of fruits and all the great traditions in baking and all that. But when it first got to Europe, it's like it was going for something like $50 a pound in today's equivalent of $50 a pound. It was such a rare commodity and so exotic. All right, let's go ahead and get into the chia jam. So here, this stone fruit jam is a real traditional jam, real nice and simple, right? Sugar, fruit, lemon juice. So fruit, sugar, and acid. That's all you need for a jam. And we're going to have all those elements in this jam, but we're not going to apply heat. So the chia seed jam is really fun because you don't need to cook it, and it's really quick. And this is a great recipe for kids. We teach this recipe to children because they can do it themselves really easily and come out with a really fun and healthy jam. So this one is not too sweet. And it has the chia seeds, which have a lot of benefits as far as antioxidants, protein, and fiber. So we're going to start with a cup of berries. And I have some mixed berries here, and these were frozen. And I wanted to use frozen berries here because, hey, they're available all year round. And you can get like a frozen berry that's frozen at the peak of ripeness, as they say. It's going to taste really great, and they're often affordable as well. So, and they work great for this jam, but you want to thaw those berries, 1 cup of berries first, and I thawed them in this style so that the juices would come down into the bowl, and I used my extra juice, and I'm going to use this juice too. I don't know if any of you were with me for ginger beer class, but what I'm doing is I'm pouring this juice into some of my bottles of ginger beer, and I'm getting like a berry ginger beer that's really pretty. So you can put that in a smoothie or, just drink it. It's berry juice. All right, the berries though are going in the blender, and you can use a food processor or a blender for this. It's not a huge amount, so a smaller kind of device is recommended. And then I'm going to just put everything in there. I've got a little bit of lemon juice, a couple tablespoons of water. We've got a tablespoon of the chia seeds. So chia seeds are really neat because they expand, and they're going to act as the thickener in this. Chia seeds, when they hit liquid, they're like sponges, and they kind of absorb that liquid, and then they make a nice texture. All right, and then meanwhile over here we've got a little bubble going on with our stone fruit jam, and it's starting to smell like jam already. And so I'm just going to give that a little stir, and that's where we want it, at sort of that medium-high simmer. And as it goes, there may be some, when you're making your jam and it's cooking away, you may see some bubbles start to form around the edges, and you can skim those off. And usually you don't want to do that until the fruit is really getting soft and cooked. And then you can start écumer, as the French say, the skimming, basically, the junk off the top, which is just bubbles. And then that way, when you jar your jam, you don't have all those little bubbles all over. And here I'm using honey. You can use honey or maple syrup, and it's just a tablespoon of a sweetener like that. And then we're going to just give it a whiz in the blender. So here we go. And you can kind of control the consistency of this. If you want to leave some berries a little chunky, don't blend it so much. And if you want it smoother jam, then blend it up. And then for this, you can see I sort of have you can't see, but here now you can see. I have an assortment of jars here, and so mason jars are really great for packaging your jam, storing it in the refrigerator. I can't really recommend glass for the freezer, although it sort of works if you give yourself enough head space you know, but there is always the possibility that something's going to expand in glass and crack, or you're going to drop it. Or, I mean, this is something that might happen to me. I'd be moving stuff around in the freezer and break a jar, so that wouldn't be fun to clean up. So for the freezer, you know, if you're going to freeze your jam, which is a viable option for preserving it for longer than it will last in the refrigerator, you know, use maybe like either a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware, something like that, or a plastic jar. Okay, but for this jam, you know, you can freeze it, or you can just have it in the refrigerator, and it is good for up to a week. And if you freeze it, it will last for up to 3 months. All right, so there we go. And we are, I think I added a little extra fruit. So I'm going to give myself a little head space there. And there that jam is. And then I have a bunch of mason jar lids here. Now, besides refrigeration and freezing, of course, you can can mason jars, and then your jam is good to go you can store it in a cool, dry environment, but it doesn't have to be refrigerated, and it will last for much longer. And I'd recommend, if you want to get into canning, you know, look, there's some really good websites about it. And, you know, if you have specific questions, I may be able to answer them. But basically, you'd take this, you know, you want everything to be nice and clean. So usually I boil my jars and my lids and all that, pull them out. And then I'd pour my jam into it, put the lid on, and then you put it in boiling water for like 15 minutes, and then it will seal, and then you're good to go there. But again, there's lots of recommendations about that. And you should look into it if you are a novice at canning. Now here's this chia seed jam I made earlier today, and let's just see how the set is on it. And so you can see it's set up really nice, and so it's rather thick. So that is good. And so those chia seeds just sucked up all that nice berry juice, and we have a beautiful, and again, a really healthy jam, real low sugar. You've got the nutrition of the chia seeds, and it's easy to make, and you don't have to add any heat to your life. Okay, yes, a question.
We did have a good quick question on the chia jam. Somebody asked if you could use the juice that came out of the frozen berries instead of the water, so that you could have more liquid in there.
Man, that is a genius idea. Yes, that's a great idea. I kudos to that. Good idea. I will always do that now. Yeah, add that juice back into the thing instead of water, right? Great idea. You'll get more flavor. I always learn so much doing classes. It's wonderful to be here with you, sharing ideas. Great idea. Thank you. All right. So let us move on to a strawberry jam. So we've got the chia jam is done. We've got our stone fruit jam working away. Oh, well first, yeah, let's revisit the stone fruit jam. So it's still bubbling. We have a good simmer going, and that's what we want. It's bubbling away. We're going to have to go ahead and let it keep cooking, and then I'm going to hit the strawberry jam, and then we'll come back and check on our stone fruit jam, which should be in a good place. So depending on how much fruit you're using and the size of your pot, you know, this will determine how long you're going to have to cook your jam. So there's a couple tools we're going to utilize. One, of course, is just our eyeballs, right? Keeping an eye on it. And then for this, I have a plate in the refrigerator chilling. And so when this gets to a point where I'm thinking, well, maybe it's ready, we're going to put a dollop on the plate and see how it behaves on the plate. And that can also show if it's thickened up and if it's going to set for us. And then the other tool is, of course, a thermometer. And so for the stone fruit jam, we're going to be looking for 215 degrees. Now I have a candy thermometer, and I rarely use the candy thermometer. In fact, I've had this one in the package in the kitchen for some time, and I stabbed myself trying to put it together because it is long. And that's, you know, and so I was curious because I always have one of these around, right? It's like a digital thermometer that mostly I use for meat. But it actually goes, it's good for temperature a little bit higher even than the candy thermometer. Or I think it goes to the same, but it starts lower, something. But anyway, it can handle as much heat as this one. But so I was like, what is the deal with the candy thermometer? And basically, it's just that it has a longer stem, so you don't hurt yourself, and you can and it has the clip, so you can attach it to the side of a pot. And when you're working, especially like the jam, it's not so hot it's going to, you know, destroy you. But if you're working like making caramels and things like that, that sugar will stick to you and really hurt. So it's nice to keep your distance. And even in a jam, you know, it's a safer way to go. But I don't want to stab myself again. I just tend to use this one, and especially I'm making such a little small batch here. So we can see where it's at this point. We might as well. It's moving along, and you know we're getting to temp at least. We're at 213, and so 215 is recommended in our recipe. But again, that that doesn't mean it's going to be done necessarily. I'm definitely going to want to cook this for a few more minutes. So after it reaches 215, but we want it to reach at least that temperature. And I can see the sugars are starting to get there for us a little bit. It's thickening, and so that's that pectin, and the sugars are working together. So while that's working, let's go ahead and look at this strawberry jam. The strawberry jam we're presenting is small batch, so we're just using a pound of strawberries, and you know that's like one of those large containers usually. And this recipe, we're using an apple for the pectin. So apples and commercial pectin, which looks something like this, is often made with apples. Apples have a good concentration of pectin. If you are going to add commercial pectin into your jam, you can add it right in with the sugar, mix it in, and it's usually like about a tablespoon per 2 cups of fruit. And this is a low sugar pectin. And one neat thing about pectin is you can actually make a low to no sugar jam if you use pectin, because the sugar is going to help set the jam. And so if you're doing low sugar or no sugar, obviously, you know, you're going to need something to hold it together. So the pectin, the dried pectin comes in handy for that. Okay, strawberry jam. So I have my pound of strawberries. I have most of it here. I did want to demonstrate hulling and quartering some strawberries. So hulling, I usually use a paring knife for hulling, and that just means popping the stem off. And so you want to leave as much fruit there as you can. And I'm just going to hull all those guys. And then we're going to quarter. So depending upon the size of your strawberry, you know, like a regular little strawberry like that, good for quartering. But if you run into something a little larger, I'd go like 6 on it. And, you know, you just want sort of that size that's going to be equal, so you get everything kind of cooking at a similar rate. And then, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world to have a few chunks of strawberry in your strawberry jam. So if you do have some bigger pieces that cook a little slower, that is okay. And, you know, that's the beautiful thing about jam and jamming in general. Everything's groovy, and we don't really have to worry about this too much. So I guess I should just relax, right? Okay, so now let's all take a breath and then continue. All right, so we have our pound of strawberries here, and we're going, and then I have some sugar, and the sugar is 2/3 of a cup for this one, and our friend acid lemon juice, and then the pectin helper coming from an apple. And so I'm going to go ahead and peel and grate the apple. So first we'll give it a peel. Or here, let's do this just for fun. Kitchen skills, right? Peeling an apple with the paring knife. Although now I've kind of messed myself up because I took some of the peel off, but here, we'll just do that. I used to love, my mom makes a lot of apple pies, and I used to like to be around and get this stuff, and I just eat these peels. And so that was good fiber for a young lad. Okay, so there's the apple peeled, and now we're going to go ahead and grate it. And it grates really easily without the peel on there. And so again, like I got this apple was a little bruised, you know, but it's great for this purpose. And that's all. If you're going to get into jam making, you know, look for those deals of like kind of bruised fruit. Again, you don't necessarily want really overripe fruit. But if it's bruised or damaged, you know, on sale, sometimes you can get good big bunches of fruit for not too expensive, and then preserve it with a jam, and it's great. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and combine everything into this pot. So first the strawberries, and then the sugar, 2/3 of a cup. And I'm just going to go ahead and give this a stir. And I'm crushing the strawberries a little bit. And this is pretty neat. Like I just randomly grabbed this spoon. This is a good one for jam. And you know, jam is that, it's jamming. So you want to jam the fruit up a little bit, and that's something like this sort of spoon that has a nice, almost not sharp, but a little more of a pointed tip. You can kind of crush your strawberries up a little bit, and that gets them going that much quicker. And now I'm going to add our coarsely grated apple in there for the pectin, and that'll help thicken things up. And it will give a nice apple-y flavor as well. And then let us not forget the lemon juice. Oh yeah, and then I did, in that chia seed jam, I added a little vanilla, and I did add the vanilla, and there's an option of a a quarter teaspoon or something of vanilla. And I like to put that in there. It's good. And that brings me to the point of like, you can add different things like, I mean, in this stone fruit jam, a little grated ginger would be delicious, you know? So there's that. You can add things into your jams. These are good base recipes, and then you can kind of make them your own. And do have a look at that jalapeno nectarine jam. It's a great combination. And again, with this stone fruit jam here, or here now, you can add jalapenos in here, and you'd have a pretty neat situation as well. Okay, so back to the stone fruit jam. Let's see now what kind of temperature. And now I am a little nervous to stick my hand in there. Maybe I will use the candy thermometer since I have it out. Okay, it is nice to get some distance from this lava. And it's moving along. I'm noticing the read is a little slower. You know, maybe it's even, could it be more accurate? It could be. But we're getting there. It's like now it's reading 210, 211. So yeah, it's about there to that 215, or staying at that 215 spot where we're needing it to be. And now you can see it's really beautiful and jammy. And the fruit, I'm pressing it a little bit with the spoon, and it is giving way. So I know the fruit is cooked, and I'm getting that bubble, like, you know, watch a video of lava bubbling, and that's kind of what you're going for here, is fruit lava. So let's have a look just at the skimming. So I don't know, I think it's showing up all right for your cameras there, but there is a little bit of the bubbles on top, and I'm just going to clear those off, and that's, you know, it'll just look better in the end. It'll be a little cleaner looking, and I can just put those white bubbles into my compost. But yeah, it's a beautiful jam. Smelling very nice. And then meanwhile, our strawberry jam is coming along. And it's a juicy one. And the strawberries usually have a lot of the white bubbles. And so that once that gets bubbling, we should have, you know, some more skimming to do. All right, and while the strawberry jam is cooking away, let's look at packaging a little bit. So I have, again, this variety of jars here, and I'll use a couple to put the hot jam in. So here I have some funnels. Save one for strawberry jam. All right, so it's nice and shiny, the stone fruit jam. And it's very hot. Oh yeah, we need to test it first, right? What am I doing? I almost forgot. So we have our cold plate in the refrigerator. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a spoonful, it's my handy ladle, of the jam on this cold plate. And we'll see how it behaves. And what we're looking for here is, yeah, and we're gonna run my finger through it, but I'm gonna let it cool a little bit. Don't just stick your finger in there because it'll just melt right off. You won't have a fingerprint anymore unless you're trying to erase your fingerprints, but that is none of my business. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a try. So we'll go let it run down a little bit, and then I'll put my finger through it, and it's only slightly painful. And you can see it's holding. So what this tells me is this jam is going to set once it cools. And that is great news. And so those plums were our main pectin source in this one, and they worked really well because that sucker is set nicely. So you can see that was really quick. And we have some jam. Some reasons to make your own jam. I mean, like I mentioned before, you may have a windfall of fruit, or you might go berry picking. But also you can have a lower sugar ratio. Commercial jams are required to have higher sugar. So actually commercial jams will have unless they're a low sugar jam, but to be just a traditional commercial jam, you have like 60-some% sugar to the fruit. So you can make a lower sugar jam at home and you get more of the fresh fruit flavor. So I'm going to go ahead or actually that's how not to do it. That's the messy and dangerous way. What you need is a nice ladle, and then you go ahead and plop your hot jam into your clean jar, and just if you're running it through a dishwasher, sanitizing somehow is always a good idea. So the sugar preserves the fruit through pulling out moisture, and then we're getting rid of more. You can see all the steam coming up. This is all moisture coming out of the fruit. And so moisture is the enemy of preservation. So if you think about like all the preserves, different styles like jerky or, drying stuff, dehydrating things, we're always taking the moisture out because with the water, that's where microbes and bacteria can live. So sugar is interesting though, because if you have enough sugar, it's going to, it's going to negate the microbial activity. But if you just put a little bit of sugar, it's actually going to feed that. So again, I'm going to reference the ginger beer, where we're just feeding that ginger a little bit of sugar, and then it's getting things moving, right? But here, if you had more sugar ratio to fruit, the sugar is going to go ahead and limit the microbial activity and give some preservation qualities. So boy, that is really pretty. And what I like about plums is they'll often give a beautiful like reddish color to a preserve, to a jam. And then this has a lot of nice chunks. Now, I could have cooked that a little bit longer. You don't want to overcook your jam because then you'll start to get like an off flavor and it can even taste a little burnt. So really it's pulled at a good time. Now, if I didn't want it so chunky, I could have mashed it up with this thing. It's a good jammer. Or I could have used an immersion blender and zapped it and then smoothed it out, and then I'd have a smoother jam. Not really a jelly, but a smooth jam. A jelly is just made with the juices of the fruit, and it doesn't have any of the bulk, the flesh of the fruit. So with the jam, now we're going to let it cool because I'm not canning this, and so I'm going to go ahead and leave it with the lid off, let it sort of come to room temperature, and then I'll put it in the refrigerator and maybe for a little while longer with the lid off and really let it cool. And then I'll pop a lid on there and leave it refrigerated. And that's what I got out of a half recipe. So you can imagine with the stone fruit jam, you'd get 2 jars of jam. Okay, so now we've got that complete. We have the chia seed is 1 jar, and then 2 jars out of 1 recipe, or 1 jar out of half a recipe of stone fruit jam. And now let's see what's going on with the strawberry jam. Oh yeah, get the jammer. Okay. So it's starting to set up, and it's really thickening. So the apple is working well for us. And just as I suspected, though, we're getting a lot of those white bubbles up top. So I'm going to go ahead and skim them. And this will just help. Again, it's just kind of to clarify and, and entertain. Well, the jam is bubbling. It's very satisfying to lift off these bubbles and see the really beautiful color underneath. What's fun, one of the fun things about jam is just the way it transforms the fruit, really concentrates the color, and for that matter, really concentrates the flavor. Okay, so let's see where we're at for the temperature here. And I'm going to go ahead and shoot for that same sort of 215 degrees. And yeah, the candy thermometer is a good idea, I suppose. It's nice not to get splattered by hot jam. So if you're making larger batches of jam, obviously it will have to cook a little longer, but you don't want to go too large. And I read somewhere that about 8 cups of fruit is really where you kind of want to limit, because otherwise a lot of the fruit won't cook through. So there, if you can think about that. Yes, a question.
Yes, Sonia would like to know, why do you need to use a canning jar when storing the jams?
Well, you don't. Yeah, you don't need to use a canning jar. Mason jars, it turns out, and I just realized this recently in as I was, well, 2 things. One, professional kitchens and at home cleaning my garage. I'm a collector of mason jars, it turns out, and or a hoarder of mason jars, depending on how you look at it. But I have so many mason jars everywhere I turn, so they're pretty handy, and they're easy to clean and reuse. So that's why I'm using them. And if you're going to can it, you want a glass canning jar, a mason jar is great. But otherwise, you could just throw these jams in a bowl and put it in your refrigerator. You want to keep it covered somehow, or a Tupperware is good, or a bag, for that matter. So any container you like will work. You do want to keep it covered so that it doesn't spoil. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be a canning jar, a mason jar. Yeah, good question. Good point. All right, now we have some real bubbles going on. This is like active lava flow here for sure. And bring it on. And I'm moving it pretty quick for the sake of the class. So I have it at medium high. But, you know, at home, or, you know, if I had more time, I'd probably dial it down just a tad, because I wouldn't want to risk off flavor. But I think we'll be fine, because again, the small batch jams like the strawberry jam are really nice to work with, because you can really control what's going on in the pot, and you're less likely to not be able to reach, you know, the bottom to stir it. And so you want to stir it often. You know, it's not constantly, but it's quite often you want to give it a stir. Otherwise, stuff will tend to want to stick and sort of burn on the bottom of the pot. But it looks like we're just about there with this jam. The temperature is good. The set is really good. That apple is incredible. So strawberries are one of the lower pectin fruits. So they usually, you know, if you're doing strawberry jam, you need a little help. One thing for a quick jam, you know, we're kind of like, we looked at the chia seed jam for a quick jam, and I might as well leave that off so we can see that nice deep color that has. And that mixture, by the way, on the chia seed was blueberry, strawberry, and raspberry. And it's real seedy with those raspberries. It's nice and chewy, that's for sure. And delicious. But one thing for setting up, like sometimes I just want like a really quick jam in the morning to go with some pancakes or something like that. And I'll just take some fruit and some sugar, boil, you know, simmer it up, and then finish it with a slurry of water and cornstarch, just a little bit to set it. And the cornstarch, when it hits the hot jam, will set. And that's good for it, and especially for a jam you're going to eat, you know, within a day or two, or even like that's like super small batch just for that meal. And that works really, really well for that kind of quick set, casual jam, if you will, a casual jam amongst family and friends. All right, but for your more long-term jam, where you really want to preserve it, you know, the cooking for a little while, up to that 215 degrees, and a good ratio of sugar to fruit is key. Okay. Well, I think we're here with the strawberry jam, so let's.
Quick question about the funnel. Is that a specific type of funnel that you use for canning or jarring or jam?
Yeah, the funnel. Good question. Yeah, this is a funnel that fits really nicely into the mason jars, and it's designed for canning stuff or packaging in jars. So it's nice and wide at the top, really has good depth so that stuff doesn't spill out. Also handy for liquids, for that matter. And I like the metal or stainless steel ones, just because the temperatures are so high. You know, it's nice not to use plastic when you're using a lot of heat. You just, even though there are some plastics that will hold up to that, I'd just rather not find out. Okay, so somewhere I have my handy dandy ladle. Here we go. And let's do our plate test. What do I do with that plate? Oh, here we go. One more time, right? Let's check out how the strawberry jam's set up. And the plate isn't quite as cold, so I'm not sure if it'll still work, or it might just burn the tip of my finger off. No, well, let's see. So without sticking my finger in, I can kind of look at how it's rolling down the plate, and then I can, so this jam is good. You can see it's going to set. It's not coming back together. I can see my finger through there and it's good to go. So there you go. That's a fast little batch of strawberry jam. 1 pound of strawberries, 2/3 cup of sugar, 1 apple, and some lemon juice. And we're jamming. And again, you could hit this with a immersion blender or throw it in a blender or food processor and whiz it up if you wanted a smooth strawberry jam. This one's going to be nice and chunky. And this will give us one good kind of pint of jam. That's the strawberry jam. So there we go, the stone fruit. And now look at that. It's only been, a few minutes, right? And the stone fruit jam has really set. And it's on its way. Now from here, add-ins are entirely up to your taste, and you can really, again, tailor these to that, or for the purpose you want to use them. And once you start making jams like this, you can even think about savory applications, and it's not too far of a leap from something like this stone fruit jam to start thinking about like a chutney, which are really nice with grilled vegetables and meats. And so for something like that, I just take this stone fruit formula, add in some, elements like ginger and some spices that would suit the thing I'm grilling, and it would be all right. Use some chilies, really good. But as they are, these recipes stand alone as really nice basic jam recipes, and I think you will enjoy making them and enjoy eating them as well. And speaking of enjoyment, I hope you've had fun with this class, and I know I have, and we got all 3 of these beautiful jams out of it. So excellent. If you have any more questions or comments, go ahead and email us at letscook@basicsmarket.com, and come visit our markets to get your supplies for jamming. And I have lots of beautiful produce to choose from. And I think that'll do it for this class. Come in and visit again next time. And until then, happy cooking.